Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. You have seen, and seeing is believing. Your ears and your eyes will be bleeding. Please check to see if you're still breathing. Hold tight, because the show is not over. If you will, please move in closer. You're about to be bowled over by the wonders you're about to behold here. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. There's an echo. Please come inside, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Oh So Curious. That's right. And you might be wondering, why am I reciting the verses of Ladies and Gentlemen from Saliva? You know why? Because I was just reminiscing the other day and I ran across this Wikipedia page for WrestleMania 23 where the great Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels unsuccessfully challenged John Cena for the WWE Championship, and the Phenom, the Dead Man, the Undertaker, vanquished the Animal Batista for the World's Heavyweight Championship. And unfortunately, though, all four of those OGs are not on the WWE roster anymore. But at Oh So Curious, our OGs are still on the roster. And today, the OG team is back together again. So today we're going to have Mags and Brian on the show, basically. So let's dive into it. Coming to us from across the pond, our resident Lord of the Rings expert, and right now, these days, she's coming to us from across 1,000 ponds, from deep in the Southeast Asian region of the world. She is newly, you know what? I'll let her say this. She's you know what? No, I'm gonna ruin it. She's newly engaged. She's traveling the world, all over the world. Magdalena, how you doing?
Ahoy, adventure. May I just say that was the best intro any show has ever given us. That was almost as good as epilogue to Lord of the Rings. So bravo, Daniel. Bravo. But yeah, I'm great. I am so looking forward to today. The OGs are back and I am really looking forward to our chat today. But yeah, wow. Echo destroyed me. The Echo absolutely ruined me. Echo. That was the best part of the
it's in the
intro.
song. It's in the song. There's
funny.
welcome to the and there's I'm sorry. I'm not a singer. So I'm doing my best here. But also with us today, like I said, the other OG in the house, we got Brian on the show. Brian, of course, needs no introduction. He's a Miami Dolphins fan that speaks for itself. And he's also the newly minted host and producer on the Thursday Morning Football Podcast. Go check it out on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you can find podcasts. We have it on Anchor. You can just search Thursday Morning Football Podcast on Google. I'm sure you'll find it. But Brian, how are you doing?
Daniel, that I was not expecting that intro. That intro just blew the lid off my Saturday night. So I just gotta say thank you for that. And also, I have to say congratulations to Magdalena too on getting engaged. So I think that's wonderful.
Oh, so kind. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, you're most absolutely welcome. And I have to, thank you for the shout out too, Daniel. We have the new football podcast. It's Thursday Morning Football Podcast. You can listen every Thursday morning to us ranting and just making fun of each other, talking NFL. So tune into the Thursday Morning Football Podcast. Should be fun going forward, getting ready for this NFL season. But let's get into things.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's get into this.
Well,
I'm excited.
Guys, before we get into it, I got to remind everybody, we are your existential movie podcast. Not only are we that, but we are also just three curious minds trying to tell time. I brought props today, show and tell, and we are welcoming you to the show.
This just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, I came prepared. Andrew has been hosting this show for a long time, and I was like, I've been on the show. I'm just one of the subject matter expert guys sitting on the panel answering questions and divulging all of my knowledge that I gathered throughout the week. But I had to bring the A game to be the host on the show, and I was
gonna say,
yeah.
It's almost like you've been collecting all those ideas
across
the months and just you're laying it all onto us right now. I don't think we're ready. But
Oh,
no,
man.
keep them coming. Keep them
Yeah.
coming.
Yes,
Well,
please keep them coming.
speaking of podcasts, not only do we have the Thursday Morning Football podcast that Brian and his crew are doing a great job with, once again, Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, Amazon, even it's on Amazon. And you know what? The other podcast that's on all of those platforms, the Oh So Curious podcast. If you're listening to us, if you're on the road, if you're at the gym, if you can't just jump on YouTube and watch us do this live, or you're a busy person, you're always on the go, you're traveling, you're in the plane, whatever, listen to the podcast, download it. It automatically updates every week. It's on Spotify, Apple. I think it's on Amazon now too. I realized it wasn't on Amazon this week, and then when I was working on some other stuff, I decided to register us there. We're about to be on Google. I think we are on Google. So yeah, basically everywhere you
Nice.
can find us.
What's that fridge thing in the background, by the way?
Yeah, what? Yeah, I was gonna ask that too. Is that a box?
Is that there is a box?
Oh, on my left? Yeah, that's the new I got a new system. It's a new desktop computer.
Are
Ooh,
you showing it off?
fancy.
I'm not showing. Am I? Well, it's here because I can't really hide it unless I like throw a green tarp on it or something because there's a whole green screen behind
What do you
it.
mean you cannot hide it? Just remove it from the camera's view. What?
Well, I
You
don't have
take
like a
it,
lot of room.
you
It's
move it.
I don't have a lot of room. Like there's a wall. There's a wall on my left. Like
Okay.
I'm almost touching the wall right now. Like it's not that far away, and so the computer is like right up against the wall. I mean, I could technically like maybe reorient it, but I basically decided that wasn't the most efficient way
Okay.
of using that space. So anyway, well, before we get any more carried away, I think we have we're way past that. But let's get into the rundown on the show. We gotta tell the folks what today's show is gonna be all about, right? So let me go
Let's
over
do
that. Oh man, I'm almost out of breath here. All right, so today's show is pretty gosh darn packed. The rundown starts with quick hits. We're gonna talk about the weekly movie news. A lot's going on. Rings of Power preview. We're gonna look ahead to that new show on Amazon Prime. Then we're going to talk about creators versus franchises. It's gonna debate like should people follow the creator or the franchise. Movie Eliminator previewing September's movies. And then last but not least, we're going to preview 3,000 Years of Longing. It's already out in theaters. Not doing particularly well, but we're gonna look ahead to watching that movie, reviewing it next week on the show.
What is
It's a
that?
nice film. George Miller, Idris Elba, Tilda Swinton. It's a star.
It's a nice film.
Oh,
It's a nice film.
let's save it for when we get to it. We'll give it its due. We'll give it its due. But anyway, so guys, before we get to any of that, let's get into open mic, right? Like this is how we usually like to start the show. We like to just open up the mic. Well, all mics are open. Let's just open it up to the floor. And how is everybody doing? How's your week been? Where are you at? I mean, today we're literally just hours away from the next Game of Thrones episode coming out, and we're a few days away from Lord of the Rings. She-Hulk has already been airing, 2 episodes. Andor is not that far off. You got movies coming up in a couple of weeks' time, like Black Adam's the next big one. You've Wakanda Forever coming in a couple of months. Are you guys looking forward to that? But are you also looking forward to getting into the fall months? Because summer's just about done.
But there's just so much happening that I wish I
Right.
had more hours in a day. Like I really don't have time to watch any of that. But yeah, I'm glad they're pushing the sci-fi fantasy sort of genre out. There's not that many dramas happening lately. So it's quite interesting how people much rather give us fantasy and not real worlds more than deal with like daily drama, because I suppose we have enough of that, so it adds up. Do you
That's
guys
true.
think the same?
Well, I think it varies by country, right? I mean, here's just an example because the other day I was watching some Premier League football, and I saw a couple of different commercials for these 2 new miniseries that are on Peacock in the US. And I'm pretty sure in the US, or sorry, in the UK, they're on Sky or BBC or something. Like one of them is made by the same guys who made like The Bodyguard. And like,
Right.
in England, they're known for like making these really good 6-episode, like 7-episode short series.
Line
the
of
US, Disney Plus.
Duty.
Huh?
I
Yeah.
love Line of Duty. Oh my
Same
god.
people, right?
Best.
So, and in the US,
Yeah.
Peacock gets all these shows, and then they're like these like great mystery thrillers, and I love watching
Damn.
them. And then I finished watching that submarine show. It was like about a murder on this military sub.
Oh yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Is that
so
any
I've been
good?
waiting for like the next one like it, and apparently those guys didn't want to
Okay.
do a second season of that because they're working on something else. But I don't know if this is one of those things. But the point that I was trying to make is like, those two shows, they're not like those sci-fi fantasy shows. They're like more grounded in like the world we live in, but they're just absolutely gripping. Like you can't stop watching once you watch one episode because
What
they
show
hook you.
is that? What is the submarine show you're talking about? Because that sounds interesting.
Oh God. Do you remember
I've
the
heard
name?
about it, but what's the name? No,
I like the
I
mystery
don't.
thrillers.
But anything regarding Bodyguard or Line of Duty, I'm like, what's that? Tell me now. I need to watch that.
Because one of the chicks that's in that show is also she's in that Time Traveler's Wife show on HBO now, and she was in Game of Thrones too. Oh my God! And even the other person, I'm forgetting the names of the actors. Vigil. That's the name of the show. Yeah.
Vigil. Okay.
It's named after like
What
the
does
submarine
Vigil
that it takes
mean?
place on for the most part. It's apparently based on like
okay.
something that's real, which is like the UK's nuclear deterrent, where they have like a number, I forget the exact number of like nuclear capable subs that are always on patrol around the world. So like in case England or the UK was like struck by some kind of nuclear missiles from an enemy, and they were totally they couldn't like respond. Those submarines from anywhere in the world could launch a nuclear strike. So these submarines obviously are
Oh, looks interesting.
their location
So
has to be
they have
secret.
they have Rose Leslie on the show, and she's Jon Snow wife in real life, and she was
That's
also
the one.
in
Yeah,
Game of
the
Thrones.
redhead, right?
Yeah. What was
yeah.
her name? You know nothing,
Yep.
Jon
I'm forgetting
Snow.
their names.
What's her name? What was she on the show? Oh my goodness.
She plays like a
Character.
detective, I think, or like a junior
Oh,
detective.
Egret. Okay.
Oh yeah, in Game of
Yeah.
Thrones. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Great
Oh,
show.
That looks
Check it
good.
out.
And 85% Rotten Tomatoes. That's decent. Very
And
good.
there's
Okay.
another dude in it who was in the show Timeless that ran on NBC for a few seasons. Like he was like the billionaire who owned the company who invented the time machine. And in this show, he plays like the captain of the Vigil, like the submarine. And yeah, I mean the fantastic cast. It's a great watch. It's not very long. It's a mini series.
They
Yeah.
also have Martin Confeston, who's of course our beloved Line of Duty actor. Oh, I'm so sold on this. How?
Check it out.
Okay, I need to watch this.
I don't know where.
I'll make space. I'll make time for this. I'll make time.
Yeah. And then go watch like the other
Okay.
ones that are like the newer ones that are coming out now. I mean, I'm sure in the US they drop after they've already aired in the UK, so I'm behind what like people in the UK have already seen. But anyway, I'm looking forward to those two shows. Now they're on my list. I still haven't watched the last season of the Expanse. But Brian, you have been, and we'll go into this a little bit more later, but you have spent basically like your whole week catching up on Lord of the Rings because you were like a novice, like I still am, but now you've got all this knowledge. So enlighten us a little bit.
Yeah, one of the greatest trilogies I've ever seen, and I mean that goes for The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movies. Great
Controversial
films. Yeah, I mean,
careful.
Yeah, I know The Hobbit's not the Lord of the Rings, but still both were fantastic, just great. Just the whole like dialogue and even just like the cast of characters they have in the films, and I from what I'm aware of, they filmed it, I think most of the films for Lord of the Rings, I think in The Hobbit too, they filmed it in New Zealand. Just beautiful backdrops and just great landscape. Yeah, I was very, very impressed. I think I'm going to start reading the books now because that's how good it was. So yeah, and then now we have the Lord of the Rings of Power show coming out. So Yeah, I'm a
It's almost
little
like perfect
hesitant with
timing for you because
it. It is
every
actually, yeah.
we all had to wait years for anyone to touch the franchise again, and you're in for such a treat. You just finished, you want more, and you're getting more. So
But is it
I'm so
is
happy
it
for
a
you.
good more though? That's the whole thing. Is it going to be
That's what we'll
comparable?
discuss.
We will be
Yes.
discussing that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. The other big thing that I wanted to do this week, I mean, we got two things on the graphic here other than how is everybody doing, which, looks like we're all watching some good stuff on TVT these days. I want to talk about She-Hulk episode 2. Episode 1 was a couple of weeks ago. Now we're 2 episodes into the show. It's got 9 episodes total, so we're on a good ways into the show. So, episode 2 of She-Hulk. Now, this is a show that I have to be honest with you guys. Like, I've thought about this show going into it thinking, okay, all right, it's going to be like a sitcom size episodes, 9 of them instead of like the 6 we've been getting. It's going to be nice and, it's going to be a sitcom like thing. There's going to be jokes, it's going to be hilarious and blah, blah, blah. But guess what? Disney's doing the same thing that they've been doing for a long time, and that's shortchanging its fans. This episode 2 was basically, it was like half an episode. Like you start watching it, you're in the thick of things. You're like, all right, like we're on the treadmill here. We're going some places here. Like you turn it up from 1 to 2. Okay, the heart rate's pumping up a little bit, and then all of a sudden, bam, like you're done. It's the end of the show, and the credits roll, and like I'm like, the amount of money they're spending on the credits and all the fancy credits that they show, why can't they put that money into like the show itself? Give us like,
It's
I'm
so
not asking for much.
wow.
Give me like 2 minutes more. Buy me some time. I don't care about the montage that you gave us and after the credits. The post-credit scene was basically useless. And the whole thing is with the She-Hulk character, like the CGI. I'm like, stop
I
animating
think
the
that
shit out of that
expression says it
character
all.
for like a 1 minute post-credit scene that basically nobody should be caring for, because all it is she's doing chores around the house that her parents are taking advantage of her being like a Hulk now. And like instead, just give me like 3 more minutes in the actual show before the credits roll. Is that too much to
You
ask?
heard it.
And
You heard it, Disney. Give Daniel 2 more minutes.
yeah, it's like this. It's like if I started eating this. Oh, sorry, not advertising. I was eating this, and somebody just took this away from me after taking 1 bite. Gone. That's what this show feels like.
Wow.
There's like this
They
certain
play
thing.
with your emotions.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Now I'm eating and talking. Whatever. You know what? This show deserves that. Here's the thing. There's a difference between leaving your audience asking for more and swallowing. Okay. Don't want to choke on this.
Take
And
your
there's a
time.
difference
Drink,
between like
drink.
leaving an
Don't
audience
choke.
asking for more and leaving them dissatisfied, because that's what I feel like. The first episode was better than this. This wasn't written very well. There's a ton of Easter eggs. I mean, I like some of the comedy in there. The CGI though, my
Yeah,
God, we talked about this in
mention
episode
that.
1.
Like, what is going on with the CGI in this? 'Cause
Okay,
it's all-
so Brian, because you put some of this together, like some of the content that we
Yeah.
were throwing up on the screen. So episode 1, right? The CGI, it looked pretty good for the most part. Like, the Hulk CGI is great, but then even like the
Right.
She-Hulk CGI for the most part was passable, if not on par with the Hulk, right? Like you see some
Right.
of these shots here, she looks fairly photoreal, but also like when she's sitting next to the Hulk and the whole scene is animated, there's less like real stuff happening in the shots, so it's not easier to like believe that she's as real. But in this episode now, in episode 2, basically like every time you see the Hulk, like see She-Hulk, she's with like live action characters, and the animation looks animated. The CGI of the character is not as good. It looks like they didn't get enough time to work on it, because clearly what they did with episode 1, if they had more time or they put more effort or whatever they needed to do, they could have made this just as good. And episode 1 had a few shots that didn't look very good, but overall it was good. Overall it was passable to great, like I said. But this episode, not so much. They needed more time to work on this. And one of the last Easter eggs I wanted to pass along here was they had Hulk basically in that Sakarian ship, assuming going to Sakaar, and maybe they're hinting at planning Hulk or something to that effect. Great, I'll go for that, whatever. But
Mm.
other than that, I have to be honest with you guys. 2 episodes into this, I am not so sure if I want to maybe I want to bank some of these episodes now. I don't know if I want to be watching that set every week because there's just not enough happening. And I say that, but then again, Daredevil might show up in episode 3, and then I'm like, I'm back into this thing. But still, I don't know. I feel like these episodes need to be
There's
longer or make it a movie. Like,
Yeah, and
there's
I feel
also
like
enough of good content coming out. Sorry,
yeah,
Brian. I
I feel
was
no,
just
it's
saying
just
there's enough of good content.
I was just
right.
gonna say like breaking the fourth wall seems to be like the new thing nowadays.
But
Like
she doesn't
it's
even
just
do it very well. I feel like the
yeah,
breaking the fourth wall in episode 1 was so much better, and there were only a couple of instances, and then in this one, almost every time she does it, it just didn't work. I mean, again, subjectively speaking,
Mm,
my opinion, it just didn't work. I didn't like the fourth wall breaks in this episode.
yeah.
Anyway, well,
same.
Who's stronger, Daniel? Hulk or She-Hulk?
I honestly tell you, I think they're different. One of them has been a Hulk a lot longer. I don't know what their actual power levels are. Just because she's more naive about her powers now doesn't mean she's not as capable as a Hulk. But they're purposefully leaving it vague, and
Mm,
I'm fine with that. But anyway, look, here's the thing. If you guys have watched the show and you like the show, tell us about it. If you hate the show just as much as, well, I wouldn't say I hate it. Hate is a strong word, but I'm not enjoying it as much as I would want to. Let us know in the comments below what you think about it so far. And if you're gonna be watching this weekly, or if you're gonna be banking a few episodes, or like just waiting till the whole thing is done airing, tell us. We would love to hear your thoughts because you've heard
yeah.
ours.
But meanwhile, Disney, give Daniel 2 more minutes. And yeah,
2 more minutes,
mid-credit
5
sequence
more
worse.
minutes, whatever you can spare,
Give me
please.
Come on,
more.
Disney.
I 30 minutes with credits. Come on, that's like 20 minutes. That's a sitcom, but the sitcom is a beginning, middle, and end. This episode just felt like they went from chapter 1, like act 1 to act 1.5, and like cut it. And it didn't even say to be continued at the end of the episode. How dare they?
Unacceptable.
Exactly. Anyway,
Well,
okay. Moving on. So
good
the other
rant.
thing that we
Good rant.
yes. The other thing that we got to talk about here is comment of the week. So comment of the week this week is not even a real comment.
Mm.
Like, because I know we get some good comments this week on our different social channels on YouTube, Instagram, and all of that stuff, but I just decided to make an exception. And this week I heard that Jason Momoa's See, a show on Apple TV Plus, its third season, just dropped on the streaming service. And if you're a fan of the Stargate franchise, you may remember Jason Momoa was Ronan in that show. And alongside him, David Hewlett was Dr. Rodney McKay, and Joe Flanagan was Colonel John Shepard, or I think later he was Lieutenant Colonel. He got a promotion. But on the premiere of this season 3 of the show, because Jason Momoa is, a total G, and he brought both of his former co-stars from SGA into in season 2 in like these small roles. Then he brought them into season 3 in probably bigger roles, and they were all on the red carpet. And I was just like, my heart was like pumping really hard, and I had a tear streaming down my face. I saw this on Instagram. I saw, David Hewlett
Aw.
shared on his Facebook, and I was like, oh my God, Stargate Atlantis. Because
So
Max,
I'm a huge fan of SG1, but I never made it to
I,
Stargate Atlantis. So
I was
is
gonna
it
say,
worth it? Is it worth? I'm a busy person, remember? So like, is it worth spending my precious time on Stargate Atlantis if I
how
was
dare
to
you?
go back to it?
How dare you? I was gonna just say, controversial opinion to some Stargate fans maybe, but in my humble opinion, I think Stargate Atlantis, in some ways, at least in some ways, is a better show than Stargate SG-1. I, I,
Big shots
I,
fired.
I'm just saying,
Wow.
in certain seasons maybe, or even certain episodes. I'm not saying the whole show, not all 5 seasons. I mean, SG-1 also went for like 10 seasons, so like there's twice as many
Mm.
episodes to watch. But yeah, look, I think Stargate Atlantis was one of the best shows on TV when it was on air. It aired for 5 seasons. It should have gone longer. They never got to make any movies afterward, but I am so glad that these three guys are back together on this new show. I have been watching C on Apple TV Plus for the first 2 seasons. This new one is the final season of the show. It's wrapping up. Obviously, he's Aquaman now, Jason Momoa. He's doing another one. He's, sequel is about to come out next year now. I am so excited to watch this third. This is another show. We keep talking about it. There's like infinite amount of shows out here, seemingly on TV, and this show is on my list. Not just because I watched the first 2 seasons, but my guys from Stargate Atlantis are on this. Like, you got Ronan, Dr. McKay, and Colonel John Shepard in this. That's every time they come on screen, that's what I remember. That's how I imagine. I'm like, his character name is not whatever his character name is in the show. That's John Shepard right there. And that's Dr. Rodney McKay. And like that's my headcanon for the show now. Anyway.
It makes me want to watch Stargate Atlantis, I suppose, because
you
really hyped it. But claiming that it's better than SG1, that's a big fat statement. Because
I'm not saying out and out. I'm just saying there's some seasons and some episodes of SGA that are better than SG1. Okay. Maybe overall SG1 still is like the best of the best Stargate was in SG1. However, I will say this: SGA comes pretty close, and in some, especially some of the latter seasons of SG1, I think like Atlantis, they were airing concurrently, and Atlantis I think was the better show at times. They had Amanda Tapping on it, like Major. I think she was lieutenant, or she was. Was she? I don't know if she was a general yet, but she was definitely like a lieutenant colonel or something like that. Yeah. And she was in, I think, season 4 of Atlantis. She became like the expedition leader. So yeah, man. SG1 crossovers. Wow. Daniel Jackson shows up. General O'Neill shows up.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They even had like big time crossovers. Like you had the general who ran the show, who ran Stargate Command after General Hammond retired. Forget it. He was played by Beau Bridges, like Jeff Bridges' brother. I forget what his character name was. He even so they had like these big crossovers. They had an episode where Ronan and Teal'c are at the Stargate Command, and like there's this big siege event happening. So they're like, it's like an episode of Die Hard essentially, and it's Ronan and those are the two like muscle guys and the two aliens who are not from Earth on their respective shows teams, and so yeah.
I know Brian's like, what
he has no clue.
Hell are you guys
like, what's going on?
Brian, you'll connect to this.
That's major news. That's major, actually, Brian.
So,
I assure you.
Watch that particular episode. Yeah. Okay. Teal'c, like, Teal'c says that his catchphrase is indeed. And in that episode, like when him and Ronan are trying to defend Stargate Command and kick out like the intruders, like he keeps saying indeed. And they make a joke out of it because like it was a very self-aware, like Stargate SG1 was self-aware in that way, right? So then Ronan is like, you do realize you say indeed a lot, and then Teal'c's response is indeed, and then he's just like a double take, and it's hilarious. It's like
the Teal'c moment.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they all survive, I suppose, because I don't think I've seen the final season of SG1, and I know it's bad because that's arguably one of the best seasons. It's essentially towards the end when they cancelled it. That's where the writing really started to go on point. But yeah, I'm glad to know that they all survived. No one died if they're making
they're not like 80 years old. I mean, come on now. It's
Can we just take a quick moment to acknowledge Jason Momoa? I mean, that guy's like, he's never dull. I mean, I wonder what it's like to party with that guy.
Oh, he's the pride of the...
Wouldn't you guys love to party with that guy? Like, what would it be like to party with Jason Momoa?
Controversial statement. What is it about him? Why are people obsessed about him? I don't get it.
I think he's a cool dude. I think he's
Keanu Reeves
kind of guy.
See, this is why you need to watch Stargate Atlantis.
I would party with Keanu Reeves too, but I mean, Jason Momoa is he just looks like a fun guy. Like he's always seems like he's always in a good mood, always laughing, always smiling, and he's
always making sure everyone's having a good time.
Yeah,
big personality in the room.
Yeah.
But like, I can also see how this can get exhausting, or when you want to have like a down heart to heart moment, just like, hey, can you listen to me for now, instead of like, I don't know. I don't get the whole fascination over Jason Momoa. I've never got it, but I suppose it's because maybe I'm not so close to Marvel and So
No,
what's
he's
Jason
in
Momoa most
DC.
famous from?
He's Aquaman.
I mean, I connect with
Oh
him.
yeah,
from,
DC,
like-
no Marvel. Sorry.
Well, I connect with him from like Game of Thrones, and I mean, Daniel, you were talking about he's
Oh
in
yeah,
C,
he was in
right?
Game of Thrones.
That
Right.
series.
What?
Mm.
What is it called? C? From
C,
yeah,
yeah.
From, is it from Apple?
It's
TV?
it's from Apple TV Plus. It's like this
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic show about 200 years in the future where some cataclysm happened and humans have lost sight.
Yeah, I need to check that out. Actually, I'm watching 5 Days at Memorial right now on Apple TV Plus. So, but
No.
All right.
I
Well-
finished. Oh, just
Yeah.
really quickly about the shows we've been watching. I need to give one big shout out to Westworld, the final season. They produced the best season, weirdly, because season 1 was great. Season 2, season 3, one big what the fuck's happening, and season 4 really, really nicely done. Very intelligent, very leaves you with a lot of questions about our own existence and place in the world, where we're heading and stuff. And it was surprising. I watched it only because I wanted to see how it plays out, because they sort of left themselves in like this, they cornered themselves. That's why I didn't know. I was interested to see where they're going to take the story, and they nailed it. And they brought up a lot of the season 1 moments and its own thing, and fantastic writing, music, setting, and Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad is there.
I love
For
Aaron
anyone
Paul.
who hasn't seen it, it's really good. Season 4 they nailed it. So I know if you majority of the people dropped out in season 2 or season 3, suffer through it, make it to season 4.
One of those shows that sort of, it was part of the zeitgeist, but then it sort of fell off a cliff. I'm not trying to like be rude here to the
it
show,
did.
but
Makes sense, and it didn't feel like Westworld. It felt like just like a completely another series, another world, whereas they managed to sort of clean up the mess and play their cards the best possible way. Really good. So if you any fans of Westworld out there, give it a chance, give it a shot. Season 4 is worth it.
awesome. Well,
Sorry.
with that,
I like it.
let's move on to our quick hits. Let's take a look at the weekly movie news. There's a lot going on this week in the world of movies, TV, streaming, and all that we cover. The philosophy, whatever we call it. I forget. I wrote the
Yeah.
copy, but I forgot what I said.
Yeah, and I
anyway.
actually don't have to do quick hits for once, so which is
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it turns out Dan's at the wheel. That's right. I'm referring to myself in third person. So let's see what I have to say about the weekly movie news and quick hits. All right, time for some quick hits. Here's what went down this week. So first up, House of the Dragon has gotten an early season 2 renewal at HBO. And that's after it shattered the record for HBO's biggest show premiere ever. It drew in 20 million viewers after 4 days of release, 10 million viewers the day of. So the Game of Thrones sequel, it looks like it's off to a flying start. We'll see where it goes from here. Next up, it looks like LEGO franchise producer Dan Lin is in pole position for the DC film's lead role at Warner Bros. Discovery. CEO David Zaslav is looking for his Kevin Feige to lead the DC Films division, much like how Marvel runs the MCU, and it looks like he might have found his man. Some exciting casting news now. Jeffrey Dean Morgan has joined the season 4 cast of the Amazon Prime hit series The Boys. That's right, now there will be, basically 3 out of the 4 guys there, He'll reunite with his former Supernatural showrunner, Eric Kripke, and star Jensen Ackles. So at this point, basically all that's left to do is for Jared Padalecki to join up, and well, then we can really get the gang back together. Alright, so next up, earlier this week, rumors made the rounds that basically Matt Shakman was in negotiations to direct Fantastic Four for Marvel Studios. Now, Paramount Pictures, they've come out and said that, well, Shakman is departing Star Trek 4, which he was set to direct. Why? Because the timing did not align. So Paramount Pictures is coming out and saying that Matt Shakman is no longer directing Star Trek 4. So it begs the question, is this all but confirmation that indeed he is going to direct Fantastic Four? I mean, let us know in the comments below, because honestly, That's what the signs are pointing to. Anyway, lastly, Entertainment Weekly is now reporting that Ezra Miller recently had a very positive conversation focused on Ezra still being committed to The Flash, set to come out next summer. It's been delayed a few times, set to come out next summer though. And not only did the conversation focus on him being committed to The Flash, but it also focused on him apologizing for bringing negative attention to the production and the company. So, what does this mean for the movie? And maybe even more importantly, what does this mean for Ezra Miller's time playing the character of the Flash in the DCU? Is he going to stick around now? I mean, are things going in the right direction? Has he done enough? Does he need to do a whole lot more? And is this movie still going to come out? I mean, it probably will. But let us know in the comments below what you think. I mean, are things going in the right direction? But before I leave you, remember to join us for live episodes of Oh So Curious every Sunday, and we look forward to having you be a part of our movie. It takes place Hela, the goddess of death, and sound. It's just about here. But before the show's even out, it's generating a lot of controversy. It apparently was at Comic-Con and generated some controversy with the fans. So the question that I have for you guys here, will the series live up to the hype? And I want to start with you, Brian, because you are somebody who has just spent a week watching all of the movies, the Hobbit trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and now please do tell me, are we going to see Dumbledore in this, or is he dead? I mean, he looked pretty old in the original movies. So I mean, is he part of the show?
Can I just say, you made it sound like they just only let Brian out because he's been locked somewhere watching, just consuming Lord of the Rings.
I don't know. I mean, Brian, were you locked in a room watching Lord of the Rings? Did you have to get out?
No, I wasn't locked in a room somewhere, but yeah, I don't know if Dumbledore is going to be in this or not, but yeah, I have.
I am being facetious. For anybody watching and taking this seriously, I know it's Gandalf, and I know it's not Michael Gambon. I know it was Sir Ian McKellen. I totally get that. I was doing that whole Jim Dwight thing from The Office.
I will say this, after watching, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I mean, Gandalf is my favorite character. I mean, I just love everything about him. I love, and especially the fact, like, every time something goes wrong or, someone's about to attack them, he's like, run, like, let's get out of here. He's like always in a hurry, and seems like he always like comes to, save the day. Every time he shows up, like the bad guys are always in trouble, but, or the orcs or whatever you want to call them. But, yeah, I mean, after watching, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I mean, without a doubt, I mean, this is like one of the best trilogies I've ever seen. I have such a respect for it and such an admiration for Tolkien's work, and Peter Jackson, especially, putting this all together. And I think the biggest thing with this, since it's freshest in my mind now heading into the TV show, I'm very hesitant to actually see what the TV show has to offer. I mean, there's a lot of things building up to this there, and especially there's a lot of pressure, I think. And Mags, you had basically mentioned that earlier when we were talking. There's an awful lot of pressure on the TV show before it comes out because of how widely regarded Tolkien's work is. His novels, he's one of the best-selling authors of all time. I think he is the best-selling author of all time. I mean, his work was so magnificent that it's influenced people like George R.R. Martin, in Game of Thrones. But there's so much to be said, previewing this TV show before it comes out. The two guys in charge of this, JD Payne and Patrick McKay, through Amazon Prime Video, who are these guys exactly? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's the big question. They were chosen
for the scope of this. You would expect some bigger names rather than
right.
Patrick,
and I mean,
who?
Right, and not that this is like the very first time something like this has happened, like where they've chosen showrunners that are just like unknown, but I mean, it's also not of the norm. You know what I mean? So
yeah, also, just really quickly going back to what you said, like the pressure, that Amazon is under. It's not only the fact that it has to work, but also it comments a lot on the company, because after spending, as you mentioned that earlier, $250 million on the first season itself, which makes a history of like being the most expensive TV series ever.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, with if they produce something that's unwatchable, that comments so badly. Like, it's such a negative light on Amazon as a production company, because you have access to one of the best IPs probably in the world. Everyone knows or at least heard of Lord of the Rings, and there's just so much to tell, to explore. As you mentioned, Tolkien's books, there is the this resource of the Middle Earth scope. It's endless. So having access to that, having access to this amount of money and not being able to please the audience, yes, there's a tremendous amount of pressure. But I was wondering, Brian, like, are you going to watch it? Do you think after of course, I'm guessing you're going to watch it, but what are your feelings about it, your personal feelings, coming from someone who's joined the party so late? Are you excited to have the story not continue, but like to have more of Middle Earth, more of Lord of the Rings, or do you feel like it shouldn't have been continued, or do you think there is just a lot of hype and expectations to live up to, and that's why they should be really careful? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, to say that it shouldn't have been continued is, I don't think that's the correct way to go about it, because I mean, it's not Peter Jackson, this time. And yes, there's these two guys that are unknown, and, who knows what kind of direction it's going to go in with this,
Yeah.
because, we talk about how, there's things that are different between the novels and Peter Jackson's work with The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But, at the same time, like, I think he still did it justice in basically Tolkien's work, and did it the right way in the way the story was told. There's a lot of intrigue with this. I am going to watch the TV series because I think there's a lot of intrigue with everybody. But the major thing to remember is go into this with not a whole lot of expectation, because I think we don't want to get hurt. We don't want to get, we don't want to get let down, because this is, Lord of the Rings is, it's regarded as, like I said, one of the greatest trilogies of all time. You can almost relate it to, in the sense of like Game of Thrones, you know what I mean? Like how the new TV show just came out. It's like, we felt like, there's still a lot of people that are disappointed and angered, I guess you could say, by the 7th and 8th seasons of Game of Thrones. So it's like, what do you go into the new TV, House of Dragon, you know what I mean? I think it's like tainted in a way, but people, I'm sure people weren't really going in with a whole lot of expectation with that as well.
Fans are going, like, I think what fans have huge problem with is because they have expectations, because there is some sort of standard to live up to. But what the series is so far portraying is a canonical departure from the originals, from the actual written source material. What fans seem to have problem with, so let me rephrase that, is the fact that it's almost like Amazon has the audacity say that it's Tolkien's work. And I think a good sort of pleaser, internet's divided, but a good pleaser, I think, for all sides would be if they said, hey, we're basing the story going to show you on the events from the book, but it is not an adaptation. Themes, but also like shield warrior box, which they really didn't have to, because Galadriel was awesome as it already was. Like, there was no need to add anything to her, and turning her into this was just one of the, almost like a tactics, just to check a certain box that didn't need to be checked. Because I said that to you before, Brian, like, those stories are universal already as they are, good versus evil. Their characters were so carefully written and like sort of arranged, orchestrated, that they all fill the role. And there's just been too much Amazon tainting and just not foul play, but what's the word? Just unnecessary tweaks in order to make it better. But as I said, going back to your point, with this amount of pressure, you would try everything just not to have it fail.
I just think there's a lot of confusion with this, where they're pouring in so much money into a production where there's just a lot of, it seems like a lot of uncertainty. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know like where this is particularly heading. You know what I mean? And this is a bit
because we don't know. No one's commenting. They're not even allowing us to know. Like,
right. Yeah. This is such a monumental task to try and like almost like recapture that magic, or that from like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's, you know what I mean, or a goal that they're trying to achieve with this TV series. And
yeah, I mean, let's not obviously be it's mostly about the story, the characters, but visually, I think we are going to agree across the board, it looks beautiful. It's stunning, the level of details, the costume, the CGI, and that's why I will never argue the show is not going to look beautiful, because I feel like that's where we see the money really shining through, where they really invested into the production side of things. But now we can go back to the whole more fundamental question, like, what's more important, story or the way the story should look like? You know,
I think you guys have put the show down enough. Here's the thing. All right, I asked you guys a question. The question that I asked was specifically, it's not come out yet, but it's already controversial, and you sort of talked about that. But let me kind of like play devil's advocate with you. I am probably the least aware of this franchise out of anybody on this panel, right? I am a novice of Lord of the Rings. I think Dumbledore is going to show up. I think, Hela, the goddess of death, is going to be in this, and there's probably going to be the chosen one taking on he who shall not be named, while the Sith Lord is like out at somewhere in the future, like setting all of this evil plans in action. Whatever.
You're crushing me.
Still, like you said, the show looks fantastic. It looks like
from a visual
movie
point of view,
that will win Oscars for production design and visual effects. Now,
100%, but so did Return of the King. They did that.
Yeah, but that's
okay. But seriously though, I think the visual effects in this look better, don't you think? Like, I mean, with time, visual effects technology has gotten better, right?
Of course, they had 2 decades to improve that.
Fair.
So let's not, blow smoke up their. Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair.
They're streaming butts.
It's Amazon. It's one of the biggest companies in the world.
Right.
They all to produce something which looks polished. It's about what they did with this story mirrors their tactic.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though. I've only seen a few trailers, of which I'll be honest with you, other than telling us or showing us that the show looks great. The key looks is the key word. Other than showing us looks great, and we get a few characters talking here and there, I generally have very little idea of what the story of the show is going to be based on the marketing. And I know like they're picking from like appendices from the Lord of the Rings books. It's not even, they've got very limited access to the source material in terms of the rights. But the fact that the show hasn't even aired yet leaves me to like, I'm going to judge this thing on its own merits, as I think we should always judge everything on its own merits. I think when you bring our expectations into it of wanting it to be a certain way, I put the question down on the graphic, will it be any good? But then the second question was, will it be Tolkien? And you guys talked about this too. Even Peter Jackson, instead of, Brian, you mentioned this like when we were prepping for this segment, instead of calling them orcs, they called them what, goblins in the movies?
Goblins in the novels.
In the novels, and then they called them orcs in the movies. Was that
orcs in the movie? Yep.
Right. So I mean,
it's just the little subtleties and differences.
But like people, when you do adaptations,
guys, there are goblins and there are orcs. No.
Oh,
please don't hurt me even more. There are goblins and there's orcs. Okay, that's the D&D nerd coming through. Okay, there are goblins and there are orcs. So orcs are meant to be like.
Okay, but the point I'm trying to make though It's like,
Or
for example, the
blockbuster.
other day I found this alternate like ending, or not all. It wasn't really alternate. It was just they cut a bunch of stuff out for the theatrical release. I'm sure Peter Jackson probably went back in and added those in the 4-hour version. But there was like the way
Yeah.
Sauron is taken down was different than like what they shot it.
It's more graphic, but that's the
Right.
whole thing why it's more appealing to children. But I agree with the point you're making, because fans did not question Peter Jackson's tweak to the story as much as they're questioning this. I feel like because also this story has not been told, explored in any other adaptations. No one touched the second age before. They can, like, there's beauty and like tragedy
And this is
in this, because they
before or
can do
after
whatever.
Darth Vader's rise to power?
Oh, for
I'm
goodness
just
sake, that's
sorry.
before
Okay,
Darth
I'll
Vader,
stop. Sorry.
aka Sauron. But
Alright.
there was a whole thing about the Sauron. There's so many, and I agree with you, Dan. Like, visually, it's gonna be stunning, beautiful, and you know there are going to be some inconsistencies, because there's no such thing as perfect adaptation. However, how much can they push like fans sort of patience? Because
Well,
even when asked about things, they weren't very inviting with the responses. No, there's a huge comment internet regarding this, that they like McKay and Payne, they're not really commenting on the progress they're doing. It's almost like they're hiding behind a veil, because they want people to sort of experience on their
but
own
I
and
could
make
make
their
the
own
argument they're
judgment.
not revealing a lot because they could be spoiling stuff, and then maybe contractually they're not allowed to put
Sure.
that stuff out there before the show starts
But
airing, right? Like that could be part of it.
seeing absolutely, but seeing how much fire is already out there because of their numerous marketing just
I'll be honest, the
failures,
marketing could have been way better. Yeah. But
Thank
I
you.
don't think we
Thank you.
should
That's all I
fault
needed
the
to hear.
marketing. I mean, Amazon
No,
is on the
but
verge of spending $1 billion on this one season in, and they've basically already said as much as, you know, they haven't officially announced it that season 2 is coming, but they've said as much with all the other stuff like who's coming in season 2 and all that. So you
Guys,
guys
there
talked
is
about
a
there's a lot of
commitment.
pressure.
There's supposed to be a commitment
Yeah.
of 5. They're looking for 5 seasons out of this, which is at least $1 billion. There's no excuse. There is no
There's no excuse.
excuse.
It's by
And a
far
little
the
bit
most expensive show of all
This
time.
is going to be the most expensive TV series ever made. There should be no excuse.
And they have it, and it's not like they're aiming blind. Like, they don't need to come up with new things. The text is there. They even have access to it. They fought for it. They just there is too much focus on tokenism and like making sure they fit certain criteria, and thus like just completely disrupting the logical and the kind of the fundamental points and restrictions that Tolkien had in the story.
Okay,
So,
but that's
wait,
the thing,
wait,
though,
wait.
right?
But-
Here, you mentioned something about because you said the word adaptation earlier, talking about this, right? And I think that's the key word. Here's the thing: I look at when they say adapting something, that doesn't mean they're taking whatever's on the page and putting it straight on screen. They're adapting it. And when you're adapting something, it's like when you watch a superhero movie, like you watch Civil War, Captain America Civil War, nothing like the comic. They adapted it. And look, winning fixes everything. Like it makes everything better. So I think like right now this show is getting a lot of hate simply because I think the marketing campaign has been terrible. For the amount of money they spent on the show, they could have done a lot better marketing it. And maybe they're holding back stuff on purpose because they think if we give up anymore, it's gonna like ruin the show. They just think there's enough of a fan base out there that you don't need to give away anymore. People are just gonna watch it just out of sheer sense of curiosity.
But have you seen the amount of likes and dislikes on every single trailer for it?
Well,
like, I think the people have spoken, and that
I feel like that's the vocal minority though. Like Game of Thrones, for example, just had its debut episode come out, and that 10 million people watch it, the biggest HBO premiere ever for a show. 20 million when you count in like all the viewers over the course of the first week. Clearly, a lot of those people were probably not hardcore fans of the show, right? I mean, maybe like 5%, and that might be exaggerating, are probably the people who were like going online and interacting with all the marketing of that number for like Game of Thrones. And I think a similar proportion could be applied here.
Giving a chance, I'm going completely open-minded. However, I am acknowledging the other side of the argument that people have a problem with, that there's money to be milked. I completely agree. But to do so, they seem to push some socio-political agenda that had no place or no reason to be there other than just to be Amazon, become like for
I see your
Amazon to
point,
maintain Amazon.
but again, here's what I'm going to say. You're saying that based on only what we know so far, which isn't a lot. And I
Fire pudding. What's the word? Like people are upset, and there isn't.
they haven't
much
extinguished all the fires
done
they're
about it.
seemingly
There's
set off.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's just not much care,
I guess
or there is
they're
just
not
sort of features that they could not give. It worries me. I'm still going to watch it, and I'm sure I'm gonna love it because, as you guys saying, it's beautiful. It's gonna be stunning. It's gonna win an awards. But let's just, I'm a geek. I'm a fan.
It could look visually
not a geek. Sorry,
stunning.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It could look
it's
visually
like,
stunning, but what about the story? You know what I mean?
we just need reassurance. That's all.
We'll watch it and find out. I mean, and look here. Speaking of which, this show is going to run basically in parallel with Game of Thrones, and we've already talked about this before on the show here. George R. R. Martin clearly has a fetish for Tolkien because he put an extra R in his name and then basically based and almost ripped off in some ways Game of Thrones when he was a kid and decided he was going to follow in the footsteps of his childhood idol, apparently. But the two shows are running simultaneously.
Let's not get into that.
In one sentence, we're short on time. So in one sentence, I want you to tell me which of these two shows, House of the Dragon or The Rings of Power, both of them being spin-offs, prequels, I think they're both prequels of their respective franchises. Which of these two shows are we gonna, like, in a month or two from now, gonna say were the better show? Max, you can go first.
I mean, obviously we haven't had the premiere. I think that would be a better question to ask next week when we see the viewerships for both and see how well they do. But considering everything, I feel like House of Dragons had a better PR and people really enjoy it. There's no like, oh, I'm not sure about it. People really enjoy it, and doesn't feel like Game of Thrones, but as a standalone itself, people like it. So I'm divided. I'm massively divided. I really would like Rings of Power to work. I really want them to be beautiful, and there's a lot of expectations, tremendous amount of pressure. That's why I know it has potential to flop.
Okay, so you're not making
Will
a pick.
Will it flop?
Okay.
Will it flop? Right. No, it definitely won't. I'm not making a pick because I feel they're both equally good, both equally worth seeing, and for different reasons. Especially when you're not fan of either, you're in for a treat because you have two incredible, probably best series going head to head at the same time. It's amazing.
Fair enough.
So
that was a very long sentence. So Brian, how about in one word, because we're out of time, which of these two shows are going to be better?
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I was going to say House of Dragon only because George R. R. Martin is involved with this. This is redemption for him, I think, and this basically this series. There's a lot of similarities between both, but I don't know. You can't top Lord of the Rings in that trilogy. I mean, it's just that's a monumental task, and I think it's one that is very hard to pull off. And I would be very, very, very surprised if they're able to pull this off with this TV series. But yeah, I'm gonna go with House of Dragon on this. It just seems. I mean, I've already watched the first episode. I was into it. I liked it. This is a time for them for redemption, to redeem themselves. So I'm going to go with House of Dragon.
Okay. Well, again, very long sentence, and but at least you made a
I'm sorry.
pick. So progress.
You can't
I've-
give us a limit. It's a
Hey,
difficult
it's-
question. If you're
Wait,
it
asking
is.
a
It really
difficult
is.
question, you'll
Yeah.
get a tricky,
Fair enough.
tricky
Hey, look,
answer.
I could tell you for free that neither of those is going to be the best show this fall. But then again, I'm not going to tell you what I think the best show of the fall is going to be because I haven't seen it yet. Clearly, I think Dumbledore is going to show up in this show, and I thought Jason Momoa was going to be in Game of Thrones. I mean, he was. Apparently not this one, though. Whatever. But
Oh,
I'm the
dear.
novice here. We clearly have 3 grades of familiarity on the panel right now. I'm the total novice. Brian is like the really like newish fan who just like totally discovered this whole world. And
the new
Max,
kid on the block.
you're the veteran of the franchise. But if you guys are watching and you have some thoughts about the Rings of Power, let us know what you think
us
the show is going to be like. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Drop a comment below. Let us know. Check us out on Instagram. We'll probably cut up some of this debate and put it up in small sections and chunks and reels and whatnot because I had some fun talking about this. It's fun.
That was great.
It was good.
I'm looking forward to the show, and I think we all are, and we'll probably make our judgments, once we have finished watching the season. But until then,
100%.
let us know if you're excited for the show, and we will take it. We'll take your comment, put it on comment of the week, and we look forward to seeing the 2 episodes when they come out in a couple of days. All right. So next up, let's
Amen.
keep it going here. We'll keep the train rolling along. We're a few minutes behind right now. Up next, we're going to bring Andrew in. We're going to bring Rolan in, and I'm going to stick around. We're going to talk about creator versus franchise. Where do fans' loyalties lie? We'll talk about it. I mean, George R. R. Martin, we already kind of talked about him a little bit. We're going to discuss like his both what would you call it, fandom of Stan Lee, like another creator. I'm glad he didn't like take his initials and like George R.R.S.L. Martin, whatever. But he didn't. He admires Stan Lee, but also doesn't want to be like Stan Lee. But we'll talk about it. You'll see. Creator versus franchise. George
Wow.
Lucas not happy with Disney's version of Star Wars.
I'm
all
looking
that
forward
stuff.
to that.
Yeah. Let's Andrew, come on in. Rolan, you come on in. Let's have that conversation.
So in this age of reboots and sequels and prequels and spin-offs, often we see that the creator of the show, he does a great job with something, and then somebody else takes the football and runs in a completely different direction with it. Sometimes they change things that fans held dear. Sometimes they work things to be a bit more relevant or, in step with the times. And other times they just ruin the last season of Game of Thrones. So what I'm getting at here is when you have a creator and a franchise that is popular with audiences, say the creator dies, say the creator sells the property and gives it off to Netflix in the case of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Who do you side with? Do you watch the new thing and hope that it actually measures up to the original? Or do you say, George R. R. Martin had nothing to do with this, so I'm going to sit this one out? What's your gut feeling on this?
Rolan?
I don't know. It depends because sometimes a new face, a new director will bring the story in a totally different light and will expand upon somebody else's idea that the original creator could never have thought of. So it just depends. It depends if the person that is getting the torch actually cares about the first movie. Because if they actually care about the first movie, then they'll know what the fans love. They know what they like, what made this movie so great, and they can expand upon it. But then sometimes you get some sequels that don't do that. It's a money thing, and they, the production studios will say, well, let's try this director. They've had some success with this. Maybe they can add it, and then it drops the ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the case of something like Stan Lee, who he created a bunch of these Marvel characters, all of these characters that we know we love, and we saw a lot of iterations of a lot of different characters. Just in the past 30 years, 20 years, we've seen 3 Spider-Men. And Stan Lee, he got as many cameos as a man could have in a lifetime and after a lifetime. But he did sort of lose control over his creative vision. And George R.R. Martin has literally said, I don't want to lose control over my universe the way Stan Lee did. He lost creative control. Having said that, in a separate article, George Martin also said he'd really like to have an MCU type franchise. The only problem there, as we've seen with the Disney spots and the Marvel movies, which have all been directed by different people and acted by different people, like you can lose momentum, you can lose steam, and you can actually alienate people if you don't stay consistent with the vision. Mm-hmm. And something like the MCU, the whole concept is consistency across all these different stories. So what can George Martin do to keep control over this?
Well, I mean, I think he has control in the sense that he didn't do kind of like Stan Lee did, where Stan Lee like was working for Marvel. I mean, he started Marvel, but like, eventually it's like Marvel is a corporate entity that he's working for, and it's like a work for hire. So anything he creates, that work then becomes the property and of the company, and the company can choose to do with it whatever they would. And that's over time exactly what they have done. They have done whatever they want to do with the property. I mean, Stanley doesn't. He gets producer credit, so like I'm sure that comes with some financial benefits. I mean, when he was alive to him
family.
And now to his estate. But George R.R. Martin and even J.K. Rowling, those two authors are two examples of creators who retain control over their properties to the point that the producers or whoever's making the live action or screen adaptations and animation or live action, they need approval and confirmation and consultation of those authors. And I think in saying so, Martin was like, I don't want to be a Stan Lee who writes work for hire.
The thing is, the other thing that makes them a bit more of a distinction, like Stan Lee's characters were all interconnected, but J.K. Rowling, George R.R. Martin, what they did was they literally created worlds that had mythology, that had, details about the entire world. And you could even say that Game of Thrones is basically an MCU type thing, because you're constantly, from episode to episode, jumping to different countries, to different characters who all have backstories and different abilities. And I actually think it's redundant for him to say he'd like it to be an MCU type thing, because that's sort of what the concept was from the beginning. It's a universe where everything's connected and all of these characters' stories intertwine in a significant and meaningful way.
Yeah, that's fair. But I would like to kind of like transition to talking about somebody who kind of maybe is a step further along than where George R.R. Martin is, right? Like he, for example, like we said, George R.R. Martin still retains the rights to the books. He still has a huge say in how they're treated on screen. I don't think he has complete control over it like J.K. Rowling does, but he still has some level of control and involvement. Whereas George Lucas is an example of a creator who created arguably the most popular franchise of all time. Like minus Solo, like every other Star Wars movie has basically made $1 billion. It is, you could say, the one franchise that probably did more for Hollywood from a technological, storytelling, and everything standpoint than any other franchise ever. I mean, and before Lord of the Rings was ever like a thing on screen. And George Lucas has expressed his disappointment over time about how what he built up and everything that he did for Star Wars, and then where Disney has taken it since he's sold Lucasfilm to Disney, he's not been very happy about it. I mean, there's a story where I mean, he said this on to a camera in interviews himself, but he offered to Disney like the scripts and ideas and plans that he had for the sequel trilogy, and Disney was like, sure, we'll take them, like Bob Iger and company, like, yeah, we'll see what we could do. Then they basically completely abandoned anything that George Lucas provided them.
But
and
this
did
is
something
not
completely
even,
different.
this is the story of every writer in Hollywood. Is, hey, I have this brilliant new idea. It's interesting, and it's something the world's never seen before. And the studio goes, yeah, you're right. What if we made it more like something that everyone's seen before? And they go,
Well, in this case, they wanted it to
no.
look
And they go,
like,
but we'll pay you a
like
lot of
old
money.
Star
and they go,
Wars,
fine.
you know?
Old Star Wars worked. That was under a different model of entertainment industry. And now we're in the world of, let's sell that thing back to them again.
Yeah.
And so, a perfect example is Dan Harmon, who got kicked off of his own show, Community, as the director and creator. And that was a brilliant show. Season 1, Season 2, Season 3. Season 4, he gets kicked off, and it is every other sitcom on NBC.
Yeah,
and
the Gaslight Year.
And it's every the Gaslight Year. It's every it's every romantic relationship that doesn't make any sense. That's just well, the studio thought this would work, and the plots make no sense. The characters feel different. It's every Netflix reboot. It's Arrested Development. When they brought it back, it was the Pet Sematary version of Arrested Development or Gilmore Girls or whatever else they're rebooting.
Productions know that they've tested like, oh, this works really well. We've seen that this has a lot of success. So why don't we mirror exactly like that? Because then that they like it. But that's
and then in Community's case, the fans were so distraught, the ratings plummeted, that they brought it back, and in one line of dialogue, Dan Harmon is able to say, oh yeah, people were acting weird. I guess there was a gas leak. And then it just goes right back to being the show it used to be and ends up being great again. So it was, I think audiences now are a lot more vocal about creative integrity and wanting to see something new. I don't know, like maybe the business argument against this is, well, we can sell this again, but here's what we're going to change about it. And yet anybody who's creative knows like creative integrity and vision is everything. And it's heartbreaking to let go of that. What's interesting is that in the case of Community, in the case of Arrested Development, we can actually see that audiences respond and can tell.
Well, I think there's also been, I keep going back to the same, I don't want to sound like I'm beating the same old drum, but there's been like a lot of, fan discontent, if you want to call it, backlash over how under Kathleen Kennedy's, which again, George Lucas picked her out, but where the franchise has gone since he he sold it to Disney. He made a handsome chunk of change, but so the question to me becomes, where do the loyalties of the fans lie, or where should they lie? I mean, you guys just talked about it a little bit, but if you are a fan of Star Wars, should you delineate everything that came before George Lucas sold to Disney, before the era of Disney and the George Lucas era, from everything that has happened since? Should you treat those as like separate things? There are some
people who don't even, like it's the first three for them and that's it. They don't even acknowledge, the original prequels. So I think you're going to find purists no matter what. But it's also important to realize that even creators can change. They can change their own minds, and if they are given the opportunity to do something differently, they do. It doesn't always work. Perfect example right now is that Powerpuff Girls is getting rebooted, and it's been rebooted once, where they replaced every single one of the veteran voice actresses and voice actors on that show who made it everything that it was. And the thematically and even the vibe you got from it was a fundamentally different show.
I didn't like it. Did not like it. The original was
Yeah.
so
There it
classic.
is.
The
Oh.
original was fantastic, and yet, you know, we have those that live action version of because they have the rights, and
Yeah.
Nick like Korra, we're gonna do another. Avatar series,
And those creators were originally part of the live action show, and
but they
then
left.
they dropped off because of apparently creative differences. So as a fan, you gotta wonder, well, do we think that those creators didn't think that the live action series was gonna be faithful to the original? Avatar, but if I was, I would feel a little torn, right? Like, do I
Well, you
watch
know,
one or the other?
so but here's the thing. It's like, if you like, I liked Avatar: The Last Airbender, the original series. I thought that was good. I never watched Korra. I never saw the M. Night Shyamalan version.
Good.
Good. I got to give it a shot because I like the guy. But I always thought it would be cool to see a convincing live action adaptation of it. But does that mean that it's going to be shot for shot? And I'm of the opinion that it shouldn't be shot for shot. You shouldn't do, make
Plus
it
an
real.
adaptation, so you adapt it. You're
Yeah.
not remaking it, right? I mean,
And
Roland, where
so
do you land on this?
it's going to be
Like,
different, is what I'm saying.
yeah, right. I mean, and then
Y-
like, I'm assuming you're a bigger fan of Avatar.
Oh yeah,
But
I love Avatar. I
so
watched Korra. I was a big fan.
so where would
Um,
you land on this subject? Because yeah, you can watch the Netflix live action. I mean, here's the thing. You don't have to choose technically, but
No.
yeah.
being
I
faithful
mean,
to the
how I always
original,
stand
right?
with these type of things is always give it the benefit of the doubt. Don't start talking smack until you actually watch it. Most likely it's going to be bad, but yeah, you have to at least try. Sometimes you'll get something like Aliens where it's somebody totally new. They come in and it's like, whoa, this is cool. I like this.
Yeah.
This is pretty
And
true.
that's the thing with an adaptation. I actually think it's better if it's not the original creator because, yeah, you want it to be adapted. You want to see somebody's
Yeah.
interpretation of it. Some
Yeah.
things like don't completely change. Don't give it a brand new aesthetic necessarily. Make it recognizable. Pay tribute to the original, like the Scooby Doo live action adaptations. Like those did a
Yeah.
really good job of balancing everything we've loved about Scooby Doo. You still had Frank Welker playing Scooby. You still had Matt Lillard playing Shaggy. So that was
Yeah.
still preserved. But we got to bring them to life in a completely different way that was faithful and paid tribute to it and wasn't trying to rewrite it. And that's actually what I fear happening with the same creators doing a new series with Nickelodeon. They've done 2 different Avatar stories. We're going to do a third one. That could arguably be the more of a cash grab.
I mean, and the other concern to that end I would have is maybe are they running out of ideas and are you going to get some repetition? And
Yeah.
because here's the thing, I mean, if you worked in the world of filmmaking in any aspect, right? Like all of us have touched upon that in one way or the other, and in any creative endeavor, really it's a team effort, and I think you want to bring in a diversity of people to work on your team because they will each bring a different mindset. They'll each bring a different set of ideas, and that will like inject fresh life into something that maybe you have done like over, and like you said, like we've had 2 Powerpuff Girl iterations already, or we have, or in the and more you were referring to Avatar, so we have had multiple Avatar series already, and these same creators are coming back at one point. They run the risk of just basically like it will seem like a cash grab because it will seem like they're just doing the same thing again, and it's just recycling the same content. So maybe the Netflix show, because now the people working on it are not the original creators, maybe they're going to bring some new ideas to the franchise that will do it some good. Maybe we'll freshen it up. I mean, as long as they don't sham hammer it like what happened in the movie a while ago.
I
They
don't.
I guess how
mispronounced
bad can it
Aang's
be?
name.
Huh?
Like his name is Ong in the movie. I mean, it's like the little
Oh,
thing. It's like, come on, you can't just
yeah,
like,
you can't do that. Yeah. I mean, and some of the pronunciations was like bad. Like, I mean, who was coaching these actors about the pronunciation of the I don't know. That's an example of clearly a bad adaptation. I mean, I'm hoping that the Netflix show is a better
I
version than
mean,
that.
again, never seen it. I've only heard horrible things about it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you can't do worse, unfortunately.
So,
So maybe
what is the
that's
question?
easy.
I mean, okay, what is the answer to the question, where do fans' loyalty lie? Do you guys think it's a yes, no, or is it it depends? Like,
I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's not one or the other. It's who's got integrity. Because sometimes creators lose their integrity. Sometimes
uh,
ideas, sometimes they completely sell out and they say, "Oh yeah, you want to put some political cause behind a character that's been apolitical forever? Sure. How much are you going to give me for that? All right, yeah, let's do that." Or they say, "You want to add characters that make no sense? Sure, do that." Um, the money will corrupt the franchise, the money will corrupt the creator. So whoever's going to tell me a better story, whoever's going to respect the love that I had for the original, that's who I'm going to side with.
I agree. I don't think it's a matter of like, oh, I'm gonna back up the creator, like that's my homeboy. Or saying like, oh, this is my favorite franchise ever, nothing they can do is wrong. I think it's a matter of favoring the original story, and hopefully everything else in addition to it, also favoring that story and also keeping that in mind and paying tribute, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
agree.
for me, it's all about story first, story all the time. So I'm even open to the idea of like, yeah, I like for them to maybe stay faithful to at least the spirit of the original, right? Like, if not the exact story beats or character